The tension inside the U.S. Capitol was electric. It was the middle of summer, but the mood in Washington, D.C. was colder than ever. The country was deeply divided. President Donald J. Trump had returned to the White House after a stunning and controversial re-election, and his second term was already setting political fires across the nation. At the center of it all stood Pam Bondi, the newly appointed Attorney General of the United States. Known for her razor-sharp wit, courtroom tenacity, and a reputation for never backing down from a fight, Bondi was handpicked by Trump himself to drain what he called the deepest parts of the swamp. Her mission was clear: clean up corruption, expose hypocrisy, and bring accountability, no matter how high the political ladder reached. On the opposite side stood Speaker Nancy Pelosi, still one of the most powerful figures in Congress. Though past her prime, Pelosi hadn't lost an ounce of her fire. She had become the face of the resistance against Trump, and she viewed Bondi not as an attorney general but as Trump's personal political assassin. The showdown was inevitable. And now it was finally here. The House Oversight Committee chamber was packed. Media outlets from every corner of the country were crammed into the room. The world watched as Pam Bondi walked confidently into the lion's den, wearing a sharp navy blue blazer, a calm smile, and her signature no-nonsense attitude. Nancy Pelosi, flanked by Democratic heavyweights like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Hakeem Jeffries, sat poised at the helm of the committee. "Madam Attorney General," Pelosi said with a cold glare, her voice laced with disdain, "today you will answer for your politically motivated investigations. The American people deserve to know if justice is still blind or just bought and sold by Donald Trump." Bondi leaned forward slowly, picked up her water, took a deliberate sip, and smiled. "Speaker Pelosi, with all due respect, I didn't come here to defend Donald Trump. I came here to expose the truth." A murmur ran through the room. Pelosi raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" Pam nodded. "You called this hearing under the pretense that my department is engaging in politically motivated prosecutions. But the real reason, let's not pretend, is that certain investigations have gotten too close to home. Shall we talk about your husband's foreign investments? Or the sudden wealth spikes surrounding the last infrastructure bill?" The room erupted in gasps. A few Republicans smirked. Even Pelosi blinked for a split second. "I would caution you, Ms. Bondi," Pelosi hissed, "against making unsubstantiated claims." Bondi held up a thick manila folder. "These aren't claims. These are documents. IRS filings, SEC records, and even whistleblower testimony. They'll be submitted to the committee in full. Let's have a public discussion." "You wanted transparency, didn't you?" Pelosi's jaw clenched. AOC leaned in and whispered something in her ear. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters furiously typed. On social media, hashtags were already trending. Hashtag Bondi vs. Pelosi. Hashtag Capitol Showdown. Hashtag Swamp Unplugged. Then Pelosi struck back. "You have no authority to question members of Congress during this hearing. You are here under subpoena to answer for your department's abuse of power." Bondi tilted her head, clearly prepared. "Actually, Speaker, I'm here voluntarily. And while Congress has oversight, it doesn't have immunity. If we're serious about cleaning up Washington, we can't cherry-pick targets." Gasps again. From the back, Jim Jordan leaned in and whispered to a colleague. "She's not playing defense. She's going for the kill." The hearing was just getting started. Pam Bondi placed the manila folder on the desk in front of her, tapping it lightly with her fingers. "Let me be clear, this isn't about party lines. This is about truth. You accuse my office of weaponizing justice, but what we're really doing is lifting the curtain. And what's behind it? Well, it's not pretty." The chamber was utterly still. Even members of Pelosi's own party seemed unsure of how to respond. Some exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't the scripted back and forth they expected. Bondi had come armed. Pelosi adjusted her glasses and narrowed her eyes. "If you believe bringing up baseless accusations against members of Congress protects your office from scrutiny, you're mistaken. This is not your courtroom, Ms. Bondi." Bondi smiled. "You're absolutely right, Speaker. This isn't a courtroom. Because if it were, you'd be under oath." That line hit hard. Even the C-SPAN feed caught several aides in the background with wide eyes. Pelosi opened her mouth to reply, but Bondi wasn't done. She opened the folder and lifted out a thick report, placing it delicately on the microphone. "This," she said, "is what I call the Capitol dossier. It's a culmination of 6 months of investigation. Our task force traced questionable financial transactions linked to the Pelosi family and associated PACs. Foreign funds, phantom LLCs, and insider legislation moves that curiously aligned with personal financial gains. The room gasped again. A murmur spread like wildfire. Pelosi slammed her gavel. "You are out of order, Ms. Bondi." Bondi remained poised. "On the contrary, I'm the only one in this room playing by the rules. The American people are tired of double standards. Why is it criminal when a CEO trades on inside info but business as usual when a legislator does the same with tax dollars and bills they draft themselves?" Pelosi was rattled. Her voice rose. "You're politicizing the Justice Department in ways we've never seen before." Bondi leaned in. "Madam Speaker, wasn't it your party that invented the phrase asterisk, no one is above the law? Or does that only apply to political opponents?" Some members of the committee were visibly uncomfortable now. AOC scribbled notes furiously while Rashida Tlaib whispered with Ilhan Omar beside her. On the Republican side, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene looked like they were at a front-row prize fight. Pelosi tried to regain control. "You've made serious accusations, Attorney General. I assume you're prepared to face consequences if these documents turn out to be misleading." Bondi raised an eyebrow. "That's the beauty of truth, Speaker. It doesn't need spin doctors or media cover-ups. It just needs light. And we're here to shine it." She turned to the clerk and handed over a flash drive. "For the official record, this contains the Capitol dossier. Every page is timestamped and backed by verified data. We will also be forwarding a copy to the DOJ Inspector General and the Office of Congressional Ethics." For a long moment, silence fell once again. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the journalists seemed frozen in place. Then, in a voice that tried to steady itself, Pelosi said, "This hearing is suspended pending legal review of the materials presented. We will reconvene when counsel has reviewed these allegations." Bondi stood, stacking her papers calmly. "Take all the time you need. But know this, my office isn't done. We're just getting started." As she walked out of the chamber, flanked by Secret Service and a press swarm, the storm had truly begun. Outside, protesters from both sides had gathered, yelling, waving signs, demanding answers. Across the nation, networks cut into their programming. Twitter and YouTube lit up with clips from the hearing. What was meant to be an ambush had become a backfire. Bondi hadn't just survived the congressional hearing. She had flipped it on its head. And the next phase? It was going to be even more explosive. The fallout from the hearing was seismic. That evening, headlines across every major network were screaming. Pam Bondi drops Capitol dossier bombshell in Pelosi showdown. Attorney General accuses Pelosi of insider trading on live TV. Washington meltdown, is this the end of the swamp era? The White House press room was buzzing. President Trump, seated in the Oval Office, smirked as his communications director updated him. "Sir, Bondi's numbers are through the roof. Independents, suburban voters, even a third of Democrats, this thing is exploding." Trump leaned back in his chair. "I told Pam's a killer." Back at the DOJ, Bondi was just getting started. Behind the scenes, her team, nicknamed the Constitutional Strike Force, was already preparing the next phase. She called an emergency press conference, standing tall at the podium with American flags behind her. "This isn't about politics," she declared. "This is about restoring faith in government. I am officially announcing the launch of an independent grand jury investigation into corruption within the United States Congress." A gasp went through the press corps. Furthermore, she added, "We have secured testimony from a senior congressional aide who has first-hand knowledge of multiple ethics violations committed by high-ranking members, including Speaker Pelosi." The name was kept confidential for security reasons. But within minutes, the political rumor mill identified the likely source, Jacob Reiner, a former financial analyst who worked inside the House Appropriations Committee. He had resigned abruptly a month prior, citing moral and legal concerns. And now apparently he was talking. Scroll, the whistleblower speaks. The next morning, Bondi's office released a video affidavit, a bombshell recording that would rack up 40 million views in 24 hours. In the video, Reiner sat in front of the American flag, calm but visibly shaken. "I never wanted to become a whistleblower," he began. "But what I witnessed was beyond politics. It was criminal." He alleged that Speaker Pelosi had used privileged legislative information to invest in green energy stocks days before introducing bills that directly benefited those companies. He further claimed there were email chains, backroom meetings, and coordinated donations funneled through shell packs. "I was instructed to make it disappear," Reiner said. "When I refused, I was threatened with blacklisting from every job on the Hill." Bondi's DOJ released part of the email chain, verifying that Reiner's claims had enough evidence to move forward. The reaction from Congress was immediate and chaotic. Some Democrats demanded Pelosi step down temporarily during the investigation. Others accused Bondi of orchestrating a political circus. But in the court of public opinion, tides were turning. The approval rating of the DOJ hit its highest in decades. Meanwhile, Pelosi remained defiant. At a press conference, she stood tall behind her podium, flanked by loyalists. "These attacks are nothing more than a desperate smear campaign," she snapped. "I have always acted in accordance with the law, and I will not be bullied by Trump's foot soldiers." But the damage was done. Behind closed doors, key members of Pelosi's inner circle began to distance themselves. Some even offered to testify anonymously for now. The storm was beginning to crack the fortress. That same week, Bondi's strike force pulled surveillance footage from Capitol security, dating back 18 months. What they uncovered was nothing short of explosive. A secret late-night meeting between a lobbyist for Solara Energy Incorporated and multiple lawmakers, including a shadowy figure matching Pelosi's chief of staff. 2 days later, that lobbyist, Edward Laskin, was arrested at Dulles International Airport trying to board a private jet. Charged with obstruction of justice and destruction of evidence, Laskin quickly flipped. He admitted that his firm had provided strategic political donations and consulting payments to lawmakers in exchange for guaranteed favorable legislation, some of which Pelosi had authored. Bondi now had everything she needed: a whistleblower, email records, money trails, and corroborating testimony. The media couldn't keep up. The nation was watching, stunned. And on Capitol Hill, whispers turned into shouts. Articles of inquiry were being quietly drafted. The once untouchable Queen of Congress was facing the most dangerous threat of her career. And Pam Bondi? She was just warming up. The Capitol building was a pressure cooker about to blow. By now, the media had officially dubbed it the Pelosi scandal, and Bondi's dossier was being discussed not just in Congress, but around dinner tables, in classrooms, at coffee shops, across the entire nation. For the first time in 2 decades, serious discussions of a sitting speaker facing a criminal indictment were on the table. Pam Bondi had torn a gash into the Democratic fortress, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi's power was bleeding out. Still, Pelosi wasn't one to bow out quietly. She returned to the House floor that morning in a fiery speech broadcast live across all networks. Dressed in bold white with her trademark brooch glinting on her lapel, she faced the chamber with righteous fury. "I will not be intimidated by a radicalized Justice Department," she thundered. "This is a manufactured scandal. It is not justice. It's political warfare, and I will fight it with everything I have." Some clapped, some stood, but many didn't. Overnight, a faction within her party had fractured away, calling themselves the True Blue Caucus. Moderate Democrats who feared the fallout and wanted the speaker to step down until the investigation cleared. Meanwhile, across the street at the Department of Justice, Bondi held her own press briefing, flanked by federal prosecutors and members of the strike team. "This is not political vengeance. This is legal accountability," Bondi said calmly. "No official, no matter how powerful, is above the law." A reporter shouted, "Will you seek charges against the Speaker of the House?" Bondi paused, then delivered the line that would define her career. "If the evidence leads there, then yes. That's my job." The statement sent political shockwaves across D.C. and beyond. News pundits were practically hyperventilating. CNN ran a banner, "DOJ prepares for possible indictment of Pelosi." Fox News declared, "Pam Bondi goes nuclear. Pelosi could face criminal charges." Even NPR broke protocol and used the word unprecedented 3 times in one sentence. Within days, a bipartisan emergency hearing was scheduled by the House Ethics Committee. It would be the most watched event in the country since the Trump-Clinton debates. Once again, Pam Bondi appeared before Congress, this time not just to answer questions but to submit charges for formal review. This was it, the moment when politics collided headfirst with accountability. Inside the chamber, tension was beyond boiling. Protesters outside the Capitol chanted from both sides. Extra security lined the hallways. As Bondi sat before the microphone, Pelosi, uncharacteristically silent, was seated directly across from her. She had demanded to be present, and the committee had granted the request. 2 titans, face to face. Again, Committee Chairman James Comer tapped the gavel. "This hearing is now in session." Bondi began methodically, almost coldly. The Department of Justice has uncovered a network of insider trading activity, coordinated political favors, and misuse of legislative influence involving Speaker Nancy Pelosi and unnamed associates. These activities are under active investigation. Today, I submit the first round of formal charges and documentation. She handed over a thick binder. Included, she continued, are sworn affidavits, financial transaction logs, communications from encrypted apps, and forensic analysis confirming the coordination between political donations and specific bill amendments authored by Speaker Pelosi. Pelosi raised her hand, demanding to speak. "Chairman," she said coolly, "I move to dismiss these accusations as political theater. This evidence is circumstantial at best and malicious at worst." Comer turned to Bondi. Response, Madam Attorney General? Bondi leaned forward. "Madam Speaker, if you wish to challenge the evidence, do so in court. Not in a soundbite." Boom. That line would be clipped, shared, and memed across the internet within the hour. Pelosi stood and pointed. "This is Trump's America. This is dictatorship in disguise." Bondi looked her dead in the eye. "This isn't dictatorship. It's accountability. And for the first time in a long time, it's knocking at your door." Later that evening, a leaked internal poll revealed that 62% of Americans supported the DOJ's investigation, even 37% of registered Democrats. That same night, 3 major political donors withdrew funding from Pelosi's leadership PAC. The DNC went into emergency meetings. Senior members were reportedly furious that the scandal had not been contained sooner. Back in Bondi's office, her team gathered to celebrate the progress. But Pam, ever the realist, warned we're not done yet. The next step is federal court. The next morning, Bondi filed a formal criminal referral with the U.S. Attorney's Office, citing potential violations of the Stock Act, mail fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Cable news ran countdown clocks. Social media platforms were ablaze. Hashtags like #PelosiGate, #BondiBombshell, and #JusticeUnleashed were trending across every corner of the internet. It all led to the grand jury decision. After weeks of testimony, thousands of pages of evidence, whistleblower statements, wire transfers, encrypted chats, and surveillance footage, Attorney General Pam Bondi stood once again before the press. The DOJ seal loomed behind her as she approached the podium with confidence carved into every step. "Good evening, America," she began. "After a thorough and independent investigation, the Department of Justice has formally received a grand jury's decision to indict Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi on the following federal charges: insider trading, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States, and obstruction of justice." The room exploded. Flashbulbs popped. Reporters shouted over one another. But Bondi raised her hand, one finger. "And to be clear, this is not about party. This is not about revenge. This is about restoring faith in the American system. That starts with holding the powerful accountable." By nightfall, Pelosi's legal team released a scathing response. "The Speaker will fight these baseless charges with every tool available. This is an unconstitutional assault on legislative independence." But behind the scenes, Pelosi was reeling. Donors fled. Allies went silent. Endorsements evaporated. Her once loyal deputy, Congressman Marcus Delaney, announced on the House floor, "It is with great sadness that I call upon the Speaker to resign immediately to preserve the dignity of this body." Bondi, however, wasn't watching the chaos. She was preparing for trial. Woman judged the trial of the century. 6 weeks later, the federal courthouse in D.C. was surrounded by police barricades. Protesters, supporters, camera crews, and American flags waving in all directions. Inside, the people of the United States versus Nancy Pelosi was underway. Pam Bondi was leading the prosecution team herself. Her opening statement cut like a scalpel. "We are not here to punish someone because of their title. We are here to protect the integrity of a nation." Speaker Pelosi exploited her public trust for personal gain, and that is not only unethical, it is criminal. Her strategy was masterful, calm, factual, undeniable. The jury watched in stunned silence as Bondi walked them through the timeline, step by step. Lobbyist meetings, sudden stock purchases, corresponding legislative actions, secret PAC payments, email evidence with Pelosi's initials approving it all. The defense tried to counter with claims of coincidence and misunderstanding. But then came the final blow. Pam called the surprise witness, Edward Laskin, the lobbyist who had flipped. He had immunity but no reason to lie now. Under oath, Laskin testified, "Yes, Speaker Pelosi approved the arrangement. I handed her the envelope myself." Dead silence in the courtroom. Even Pelosi looked shaken. Bondi calmly turned to the jury and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this case isn't about Democrat or Republican. It's about right and wrong. And I think you already know which side of that line we stand on. Balance scale verdict and victory." After just 11 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty. On all counts. The courtroom erupted. Reporters raced to publish. The American people watched history unfold as Nancy Pelosi, the longest-serving speaker in U.S. history, was convicted of federal crimes. Outside, Pam Bondi gave a final press statement. "This wasn't a victory for me. It was a victory for every honest American who plays by the rules, pays their taxes, and believes our leaders should do the same. Justice has no party. It only has principles." Eagle aftermath, a new era. The ripple effects were massive. Congress passed the Pelosi Rule, a sweeping ethics reform package banning members of Congress and their families from owning individual stocks while in office. Pam Bondi became a national hero. Approval ratings soared. President Trump awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, calling her a fearless patriot who cleaned out the swamp with fire and steel. She didn't take a victory lap, though. Bondi quietly returned to work the next day, her office already buried in files for the next case. When a reporter asked if she'd consider running for president someday, she just smiled and said, "I'm not done fighting yet." United States: the legacy. Pam Bondi's takedown of Nancy Pelosi became a historic milestone in American political history. More than just a courtroom drama, it was the spark of a nationwide demand for accountability regardless of party, legacy, or name. Pam Bondi didn't just destroy Pelosi in Congress. She dismantled decades of untouchable power. And in doing so, she didn't just make history,